How is For Honor in 2024 and should you play it? Regardless if you're a new or returning player, in this video I'm going to tell you what this game is all about, touch upon all the problems For Honor has fixed over the years, the problems left, some of the new things that have been added, and finally if I recommend you buying or returning to this game. As a new player, I'm sure you've seen videos about For Honor, and while the gameplay does look interesting, a lot of the reviews on this game seem negative or spiteful in some way. It should be noted that For Honor has become a much better game over the years, but sadly the negative stigma that this game got early on has never truly left its image, kinda like No Man's Sky. Overall, while it still has some issues, I would consider For Honor to be a really good game as it is currently, and I encourage you not to get swayed by the words of the people who are bitter towards this game, because for some reason this community is filled with individuals that just want to hate for the sake of hating, most likely because they're really bad at this game and refuse every chance to learn and get better, instead of treating For Honor like the proper strategy-based fighting game that it is. So if you really want to know what this game's about, just watch some popular YouTuber or streamer play the game, and see if the type of gameplay is for you. Do not take these hate comments seriously, because most of them are from people that have not played this game in years, and for some reason they feel like they have the authority to speak on the quality of the game as it is currently. So as stated, watch someone else play the game, and do not take these comments seriously. In terms of the real problems you'll get into as a new player, it's very easy to get killed by somebody who spams a single attack. So for example, the most popular noob destroyer in this game being Storm Rush, a move used by Orochi, Samurai. But what you gotta know is that every move in this game has some form of counter, and once you know what that is, you'll still get hit by it from time to time, because, you know, it's a mix-up, obviously, but you won't get spammed by it anymore. Another problem you'll get into as a new player is that the game doesn't really teach you a lot of its mechanics. So for example, how do you teamfight properly? What's externaling? How do you gank? What's hit stun? You don't have to worry about these things when you're just starting the game, just go out there and have fun. But again, improving at this game can be as easy as searching up a guide on YouTube. As a new player, when you get to something, there's two things you can do. Complain about Storm Rush on the internet, or learn to interrupt it, or externally block it. As to what hero to pick, you should always go for the hero that looks cooler to you, but if you're new at this game and you can't handle all the attacks coming at you at the same time, then pick someone simple that can block from all sides, like Warlord or Conqueror. And understand a lot of the tier lists you see online are from higher level people, and they won't necessarily apply to you. But yeah, if you've never played For Honor before, and you like the whole medieval cinematic feel that it gives you, then go play it. The story mode is very simple and sort of outdated, but it still has some awesome cutscenes and characters that I love. And you can always play against AI if you don't really feel like fighting real players just yet. Just have fun. Slowly get better at the game, and don't take haters seriously. Now for what's likely to be most people watching this video, should you come back to For Honor, and what changed? As I said, the game over time has fixed a lot of its issues, so I'm going to mention most of them now. That way you can decide whether it's time for you to come back or not. First of all, in my experience, if your internet is good enough, the game rarely has any connection issues at this point. The CCU, or Core Combat Update, made light attacks faster, and while you can still block them on reaction if you're good enough, the game works either way, because if you can't react to them, then they work as an opener. Which is fine, because if you predict the light is coming, you can always dodge attack. But if you can react to lights, then they become an interrupt tool for the real openers, stuff like unblockables and bash hits. The game is playable either way. And yes, every character has a dodge attack now, which is a good thing. Dodge attacks are a tool needed to counter stuff like oncoming bashes and unblockables, and any character without a dodge attack these days would immediately be D tier. They're part of the game, and they're necessary for the game to work. Speaking of which, bash spams have been removed because, while bashes are now unreactable and viable as a form of offense, there's now more of a delay between dodging and actually doing the bash. So it's a proper mix-up now, meaning that while unreactable, they are slower. You can now interrupt them way more easily than before. So you're not going to get bash spammed anymore. As for option selects, or more specifically, zone option selects, those have been completely removed. Again, many steps have been made to ensure that the offense in this game works properly, including reworking a ton of characters, and yes, while the reworks do often make them lose a lot of what made them special, they also add some stuff here and there, so they're technically an improvement, or sometimes they're just a straight up improvement. I mean, look at Medjay. If you had a problem with ganking, or rather infinite ganks, then fear not, because Hitstun is currently being looked at, and as of this video, the testing grounds for this Hitstun rework have happened, and the outcome seems to be pretty good. Everyone seems to agree that ganking is now harder, and while this hasn't fixed all the ganking issues in this game, it's still a big improvement. And then you have other things like Reflex Guard being removed. The arcade mode is now free for everyone. New Dominion maps are in the works, and you have a lot more characters to choose from than you did before. There's tons and tons of other fixes the game has had over time. Obviously, I'm not going to mention or remember all of them. Just know that this game has come a very long way since 2017. And to be frank, The more you know about this game, and the more you look into it, the more you realize that the let's go back to 2017 crowd are just nostalgia coping and probably have never played a fighting game in their lives. So it should go without saying that For Honor is a perfectly functional game now. It's not perfect, but it is good and it works. So now I'm going to point out some of the problems that is left, or at least what I consider to be the most major problems. Starting with number 1. Quitters. Yeah, it's quitters. Sadly, the game has barely done anything to punish the people who leave matches repeatedly, leading to tons of people doing it every single day, especially in Breach. If you play Breach, it's honest to god easier to find a Breach game with a whole team of people that suddenly leave when the first kit is breached, than to find a game of people who actually are willing to play the game to the very end, be they on the winning side or losing side. Although since getting repeatedly ganked is probably the main source for rage quitting, hopefully the hit stun fixes will mitigate this issue if only a little. Though at number 1, I'm also going to include bad matchmaking because, as I've already explained in other videos, bad matchmaking is directly caused by bad players who quit games before they lose, and it's all their fault this is happening because they're pussies and they're not real people, so fixing one should fix the other mostly. Second, balance. I mean, it's gotten to the point that you can pretty much pick any character except for maybe Nusha and still do really well if you're good enough, but tier lists still exist for a reason, and this includes feats. Feats are still incredibly imbalanced, but since you always have 3 to choose from, you're still gonna have at least one that is pretty good. And at third, we got matchmaking times. Now, this is not really an issue if you play Breach, Dominion, or Duels. It can get a little slow on brawls, but if you're playing an event game mode, elimination, and skirmish, well, those are still playable if you're willing to wait a little bit. And then there's Tribute. We don't talk about Tribute. The solution to this would be to add a quick play feature, which would let you select several game modes at once instead of just one. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The game still has more problems, but those are pretty minor, like the story and the multiplayer being bad. Like, yeah, the game's lore is pretty shitty, but who cares? It's lore in a fighting game. Or like, how come we still don't have an emote wheel? Or how does Pirate have infinite bullets and our blind lock without having to reload? You see what I mean? These are nitpicks, and it's always something you can point out to being a flaw in the game if you're striving for perfection. But in terms of the real problems in the game, it's basically the stuff that I mentioned before. Everything else is just stuff that could be improved upon, let's say. Overall, For Honor has come a very long way over the years, and while the developers still mess something up here and there, objectively speaking, the game does get better, and for the record, it's not a dead game whatsoever. This was the game's player base when the game launched. This was the game's player base after they realized that the game sucked, so much for let's go back to 2017 by the way. And this is the player base now. The game's currently running a new marketing campaign, so to be honest, I only expect this number to go higher. And big thanks to John Liner for helping me run a poll on both our channels. As you can see, the PC player base is roughly a third of the total amount of people playing this game, and that's only counting the people who play on Steam. So yeah, the game ain't dead. So be it you're a new player or returning player, I definitely recommend you playing this game if you're willing to die a lot and improve just like any other fighting game. So yeah, thanks for watching, and goodbye.